What's up everyone, Jason Brown here, the King of Programming. We are doing another program review. This one has been requested a lot of times and we actually got around to filming this a while back, actually a few weeks back, but we had some technical issues with the screen recordings behind the scenes. So anyways, you guys don't care about that. We went ahead and redid this review because again, it was such a highly requested review. So I start off all these videos the same way and want to give you guys some context. So those of you that have been here for a few reviews know what I'm going to get into here, but I am looking at the quality of the programming, the fundamentals of the programming, not my own bias or whether or not I like the person's social media or I like the style of training. I am looking at the fundamentals. Okay, now with the fundamentals, we have things like exercise order, exercise selection, sets, reps, and rest intervals, conditioning, what types of conditioning, is there a clear intent, yada, yada, yada. You guys have heard it before, but it's important to know what I am looking at so you can understand what it is that makes a program either an approved or rejected program, but also give you some context. And a lot of you guys have reached out and said that you're applying some of this stuff in your own programs. You're reevaluating some of the things that you're doing with the programs you write for clients, which is awesome to hear because I think that a command of the fundamentals is what gets you to elite status as a coach. Now, when I look at this today, I actually took a glance already and it's different than the last program. I'm not sure why that is, but for reference, we are looking at Marcus Philly's program and this is Persist and it's delivered in his own app. You know, again, we're going to get right into what's here. So without further ado, let's take a peek at this program. And one thing I usually say is that what I want you guys to try to keep in mind is what has happened within the week of training. So as we progress through this and we get to, you know, day 3, 4, 5, I'm going to recall some of the stuff that I saw on the previous days. And there's going to be legitimate reasons for that. You're going to understand why in a second here, but just try to keep a kind of a running tally of what you've seen thus far. And that will help, you know, really for you to understand this and for it to make more sense. So day 1, this is November 13th. And for those of you that are wondering, am I trying to show people's programs? No, I'm not. We signed up for a free trial that you can certainly sign up for with any of these programs. Marcus actually has a free 14-day trial, which is really awesome of him to do that. And, you know, an additional side note, I think Marcus Philly has some of the best content on Instagram. It is very, very concise. It is very detailed. It is done well, which, you know, obviously lends itself to the amount of followers he has and obviously the credibility he has as a coach. So I think his content is top notch. And, you know, if you don't follow him, you know, check some of that stuff out. So without further ado, day 1, we've got a lot of details here, which I like. It's very clear as to what we're doing for our warm up, what we're doing for these training sessions. But I will say some of the stuff to me, I kind of don't understand. I don't understand doing, you know, essentially a conditioning piece before we do a strength piece. To me, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But I do think that the style of programming that Marcus Philly has made popular, functional bodybuilding, has a lot of results to back it up. And, you know, people do love it. And I think that for people coming from CrossFit, it is a great fit on a lot of levels. So let's start off. We've got every 2 minutes for 3 sets. We've got a bike sprint. We've got a dumbbell, short step walking lunge. We've got a tall plank to alternating toe touch. So, you know, I think you could probably call this more of a warm-up piece, a full body warm-up where we're getting our lower body warmed up. We're getting our core warmed up. We're resting 230 between rounds. You know, so a fair amount of rest here. And I'm not sure what type of RPE we're looking at. Oh, he tells you set 1 is moderate, set 2 is hard, and then set 3 is maximal. So again, this isn't something I would program. I would program something like this later in the session, but maybe this is part of the style of training. From there, we go into strength intensity, and you're going to see this theme play out across the week, where we're going into our main lift of the day. He has you doing a low incline barbell bench, where we're essentially descending in reps, but obviously going up in weight. He has you, let's see what we have for rest. He's got you doing this every 2.5 minutes for 3 sets. Okay, so, you know, a fair amount of rest there. Could we go higher? Maybe. I think the way it's structured, one thing you guys need to remember with CrossFit is that the way something's structured, the way it looks on paper, is a lot how people perceive it. So I think saying every 2.5 minutes for 3 sets gives them the element of, again, more time domain, where we're doing these tasks in this allotted amount of time, and that allows us to build and rest. So I think there's a level of definitely novelty to that people like. For me personally, I would say we do 3 sets. The rep scheme is 8, 6, and then weight, you know, whatever that final rep is, it says subtract 10 to 15% of the weight from that set 2, and then do max reps. So I would just say say we do this rep scheme, and then we rest this much. Again, my own personal preference, but I think the way it's set up is perfectly fine. I don't have any issues with that. And then we go into strength balance, which is a cyclist squat for 8 reps every 60 seconds for 8 sets for 8 reps, so 64 total reps. I think for strength endurance or someone that's high level, wants to build some serious lower body endurance, we could certainly do this, but I do think that the rest interval is quite low for me to be pushing any type of weight across 8 sets of 64 total reps, especially he has this loaded, with a back squat. Could we do this with a different implement like a kettlebell or a goblet squat? Probably going to be a better fit for this scheme, but again, it's in line with the style of this training, and I do think that someone would be hard pressed to be pushing the load as well as hitting the constraints of this in this period of time. And then we culminate the day with a conditioning piece, 4 rounds, 15, 12 calorie bike, a dual kettlebell push press, and then an air squat. So this is very much a push day, a push style day. We've got obviously upper pressing, we've got a conditioning piece, a quick conditioning piece that we start with, and then we end with a little bit longer conditioning piece, a little bit more local endurance, 12-minute time cap, and then a cool down. So overall, I think there's a lot of good things about this day. I love the level of detail. I love the consistency in terms of just the details here and how things are structured. He's using this structure across a week. My feedback would be this conditioning piece that is at the beginning goes more towards the end of the workout and not at the beginning, because this is definitely going to pre-fatigue you for what we have coming. And we have a fair amount of work coming as far as barbell bench, where we're pushing some load. We've got a cyclist squat with a barbell, 64 total reps. So again, I think, might be a lot to ask, but overall, this is a different style of programming. And I think that, every time we do these, we got to make sure that we understand what the style of programming is. And this is geared towards being a push day, full body pushing exercises. So I think, well, as we start progressing into day 2, day 3, this is probably going to make more sense where this stuff fits, but those are my 2 cents. Those are the things I would potentially change. So let's look at day 2. Today, we're looking at a full body pulling day. Okay, so again, kind of makes sense, right? We just did a full body day pushing. Now we're going to focus more on pulling musculature. So we're starting off with 3 working sets of a dumbbell row, dumbbell power clean, and then max box jump overs, 30 seconds of reps of max reps. Again, I don't really have any issue with this other than I would want to know, I guess, as the end user, is what's the goal for this? Why does this happen early? Why does this happen before I do speed strength work in this case? So that to me would be the part that I would want to understand, because I certainly don't want to go into speed strength work where I'm already pre-fatigued, because I've done in this case, probably looking at anywhere from 8 to 10 minutes of conditioning, if you will, more, again, local endurance, if you will. But I think that the placement of that could have an impact on what we were doing thereafter. So in this case, we were doing speed strength work. We've got 2 sets with an empty barbell where we're doing, a few movements here. We got a snatch grip deadlift, behind the neck snatch press, overhead squat, which I'm kind of confused on too, because this is supposed to be more of a pulling day. So we got the snatch grip deadlift, but then we go into more pushing. So not sure how that pans out. But then part 2, after we do this warm up, is we're heading into some snatch and overhead squat and a burpee over the bar every 3 minutes for 4 sets, so 12 total minutes. And you definitely got some high anaerobic demand here, just based on what we see here as far as reps, as far as how long each set's going to take. I mean, if we're looking at this from the lens of an athlete that's pretty good, that's got a decent level of capacity, anywhere from 60 to 90 seconds per round. So they're going to be resting about 1-to-1, give or take. So definitely a pretty demanding piece. Now, what I don't understand next is that we're getting into heavy sumo deadlifts with 12, 10, 8, and then a set of max reps. So that's set 4, we're doing max reps. So this coming after conditioning piece 1, conditioning piece 2, I personally wouldn't do it that way. I would put that sumo deadlift at the beginning of the session. So when we put the sumo deadlift at the beginning of the session, what does that mean? That means we can certainly push the loading more. We can focus more on the strength element of this. He's got 2.5 minutes. So 4 sets every 2.5 minutes. Again, I think in this case, we could go longer on the rest interval. So I would say sumo deadlift, we do this rep scheme, but we rest 3 to 4 minutes, building in weight. And then of course, if you wanted to have this conditioning work, and some of this conditioning work is like accessory work with cyclical pieces built in. That's what's one of the cool things I think about functional bodybuilding, is that he does build in kind of the element of aerobic work with just, single joint work, as well as just a variety of different movements to work on things like hypertrophy and obviously local endurance. So there's definitely some elements there that you can lean on as kind of a hybrid, if you will. But where this session is, how things are placed, this is not what would be optimal for most people, especially if you want to push the load on that sumo deadlift. Now, if you want to go into your sumo deadlift pre-fatigued and not push the load, that's a different story. But again, that's not what I would recommend. And then we've got another conditioning piece of strict chest to bar pull-up and 25 double unders, and that's a 10-minute AMRAP. So overall, this day has some issues with it. I don't think it's enough to really write this program off. I think there's a lot of good things here, but again, making some order adjustments would be my first place that I would go to. Okay, so let's move on to day 3. So day 3 is an active recovery day. We've got 30 minutes of easy row, a single arm farmer carry, plank pull through. I love this day. This is a great day. This is a great way to do aerobic work, but add some other elements to keep it sexier. Keep it, done in a way where people are going to look at it and they're not going to say, oh, this is boring, I'm not going to do it, or I don't have time. People will make time for this because, again, it looks like training, and perception is everything with online programming. We want people, in some ways, we want to trick them into doing the things they need to do. They need to do steady state aerobic work. Everyone needs it. There's not one person that doesn't need it. So I think this is a great way to do it. I program pieces very similar to this myself, so I really like it. And then he's got a full body chin box. We're, again, just opening people up. I love this day. This day to me is a win. So nothing really to change there. It's great, and it fits really well into this program, what he's doing. He's already done, 2 relatively, I would say not relatively, I'd say high intensity days for day 1 and 2. And then this makes a lot of sense having this happen on Wednesday. So let's go into our next day. We are doing some tibialis bar raise, some Cossack squat. So let's look at the intent of this. This is a full body push similar to what we do on Mondays. I like that. I like giving people that information. That makes sense, right? Like it's going to allow someone to be more familiar with the goals of this training plan. So we're doing some pre-fatigue work. That's what he labels it as. Some strength intensity work with the back rack reverse lunge. I have no issues with that. I think the rest interval could be longer though, especially if we're going to load it super heavy. Every 75 seconds for 8 sets. Not going to be enough for us to push that. So I think that people coming from the CrossFit world will definitely push these movements more than just a regular person. A unilateral movement, especially something where we can load it in the back rack position. So I would go higher rest. And then strength balance, we got every 3.5 minutes for 3 working sets of a weighted bar dip, and then directly into some dumbbell bench. So essentially this is a compound set where we're working the same musculature with 2 movements. And again, it's one of those things I've talked about in past reviews where, it's a strategy. We can use it. It's great for really to get some new gains, to break some plateaus. It's definitely not something I would use all the time, but I'm not saying that he uses it all the time. I'm just saying he's using it here, and I actually like the way he's using it. It makes a lot of sense to me the way he's using it. He's got bar dips, which are going to, be obviously different than a dumbbell bench press, but also similar in terms of key musculature. So I like this. I think it's done well, and it's a good strategy to use. And then we culminate the day with some more conditioning. He's got every 4 minutes for 3 to 4 sets of a 150 meter run, push up, a wall ball, a push up, and then run. This is a great conditioning piece. I don't have any issues with this. I think for what it is and the time frame, 4 minutes, the amount of work, we're looking at this, someone's going to get about 1-to-1, give or take, depending on their ability. But I like that he actually gives 3 to 4 sets, so give people the option how they're feeling. I love ranges. So when we do rep schemes, I love to do ranges, 3 sets of 8 to 10, 5 sets of 4 to 6, things like that. So we can let people go by feel. And maybe they do their set of 5 and they realize that they actually have a few more reps in the tank and they do 7. So maybe instead of doing rigid 5 sets of 5, you do 5 sets of 5 to 7. And of course, that's going to change what that could potentially mean within that program. But I like ranges because ranges allow people to auto-regulate and go based on the feel in that actual session. So overall, I think this is a pretty good day. My feedback really is kind of the same. I would like to just reorder some of the stuff. This tibialis work is great work, but I don't think it needs to happen there. I'd like to see this back rack reverse lunge as the main movement of the day in this session. Okay, so Saturday we have our second full body pull day. So again, similar. He's telling you it's similar to what we do on our first full body pull day. So he's got a warm-up, he's got our conditioning, which the conditioning consists of some swings, some bar muscle up. Again, bar muscle up, very unique movement, but something that, anyone that has a decent level of CrossFit will have no issue doing that. And he's very specific in what he says, kipping bar muscle up, and then a front rack carry. I don't have any issues with that piece, but again, part 2 is 2 power clean, 2 hang power clean. So exercise order, I would say we move that, okay? Move this conditioning piece towards the end, especially what it's made up of. We've got swings, we've got a hip hinge, we've got some bar muscle up, some loaded carry. I think that would fit very well towards the end of this session. Let's see what else we have before we even say that. And then we've got some upper back work, some supinated barbell row. And again, he's using a very similar strategy with compound sets here. We're working the same musculature, so it's row on row. And again, in the right context, it can certainly be very, done very efficiently. And not, again, I don't have any issues the way it's done here, other than the fact that we are potentially doing some conditioning before this. And how is that going to affect the loading we use? Probably have to wait and see, right? So our strength balance work is we've got some single leg work for hip hinge. We've got some core work, so a weighted hanging knee tuck, and then cool down. So overall, guys, I think this is a very solid program, and I'm not surprised that it is. Based on what I've seen and based on, just some of the stuff I've heard and seen over the years, I think Marcus Filly is a really smart coach, and I think he is doing this for the right reasons. I think that people that will do this program will get great results. And my only gripe is just the order. Now, maybe there's something I don't know here. I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys I know everything. Maybe there's something I don't know. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. Some of these reviews are just so bad that I can't, right? But this is one that I almost want to think maybe there's something more to this than meets the eye. Something like a sumo deadlift or a heavy unilateral movement or a heavy press, or go down the list of multi-joint movements. Anything done heavy or a power movement like he's got a clean complex, doing that earlier in the session is going to allow you to get heavier loads and get more from it. If the goal is strength, you need to rest longer between sets. You need to prioritize that movement early on in the session. Again, this is in my opinion, this is like textbook basic stuff here. Now, someone that is trying to compete at a high level of CrossFit needs to have high levels of GPP. So they need to be able to recover. So let's say, CrossFit games or any type of CrossFit competition where you have just this shift between energy systems. You're working aerobic, you're working anaerobic. You ask someone to do a 2K row time trial and then go into a clean and jerk max. That is not uncommon. However, what we need to think about is that training or is that testing? Now, can you train and test and have them be similar? At times, yes. But if you do all of your training like testing, where you do pre-fatigue state, all of this heavy work, then of course you're gonna sacrifice strength gains. Okay, so my goal for people I work with is to get them the most in the least amount of time. So the minimum effective dose, and what is the best way to go about that? If someone I'm working with is training for a CrossFit competition, we will certainly do things like this, but the core of the training will be in our strength session, we build strength. In our aerobic session, we build the aerobic system. In our GPP session, or maybe our GPP work comes after the strength work, we work on those things so they are, in essence, separate qualities. So again, that's just really something I want you guys to think about, kind of a take-home point here. But this program overall is a solid program in terms of exercise selection. I love the combination of mixed modality using loaded carries and conditioning pieces. I love the aerobic work that's in there. I think, my nitpick would be exercise order. You could probably benefit from at least one more of those aerobic sessions, one or more of those, longer 30, 40, even 60-minute aerobic sessions. And, some other things that I would potentially highlight would be doing a little bit more direct glute work, pulling from novel angles. So we saw a fair amount of rowing in there, but I like to see some different angles like face pulls, maybe even some prone rear delt raises to emphasize the upper back complex in a different way. But again, I'm really nitpicking on this. This program is approved, and I think that people that use it will get phenomenal results, and I would recommend this program to other people.
Best program available on the internet today.
I think it's very difficult to find a trainer like Jason that...
Since joining Everyday Heroes, I feel like I've stopped working out and actually started training.